What is a Roth conversion and why it can be beneficial? And we want to talk about this because there's been a lot of news, social media, posts, etc. about Roth IRAs, backdoor Roth, mega Roth, Roth conversions, and that creates a lot of confusion. So we want to really drill down a little bit into what it is and why it may be beneficial. Now, let's start with the basics, okay? There's two types of IRAs or 401k plans. There's traditional IRA or traditional 401k and traditional and Roth 401k or Roth IRA, okay? The traditional is where every dollar you put in there, you took a deduction for it that year, okay? And then when you pull out the money, it's all taxable, okay? So pre-tax going in, gross tax deferred, all taxable when you pull it out. Roth is a little bit different in that it's taxable when you put it in. So you're using after-tax dollars, still gross tax deferred, but when you pull it out, it's tax-free. Okay, now, at the basic premise of Roth IRAs and Roth conversions is the fact that we want to try to be as much in control of our withdrawals and distributions, optimizing them, and minimize the things we can control, which is tax brackets. Okay, and why we say this is because, who makes the tax brackets? The government. Right? We can't control that, but we can try to play within the established rules. Rule one, which we'll get to in a second, are tax rates. The other two is something else you've heard, which are required minimum distributions, RMDs. Okay, and this has been huge lately because the latest legislation has been trying to push requirement distributions, RMDs, back later. What is an RMD? It's where the government forces you, literally, you are required to pull money out of your traditional retirement accounts, out of your traditional IRA, 401k accounts, once you hit a certain age. It used to be 70 and a half. It's eking back 72. Ideally, theoretically, according to the latest legislation, it's going to hit 75. But at that point, you have no say or control as far as leaving money in there, not paying taxes. You have to take it out and pay whatever your tax bracket is that given year. Yeah. So that's one thing we can't control, okay? The other are the tax rates. Jason, talk to us a little bit about the tax brackets and what we're looking at when we're doing this whole Roth conversion strategy.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you actually implement the Roth conversion, basically you're opening up a Roth IRA. You're taking money from your IRA, and when you pull that out of your IRA and do what's called a Roth conversion into your Roth IRA, that is a taxable event. That money that comes out of your IRA is taxed at your income tax rates. And so because, like some people say, well, why don't I just convert all my IRA? I can have it all tax-free. Well, if you do that and you had $1 million, IRA and you converted it all, well, it's as if you made $1 million in income, and that's taxed that year. So you'd be paying, 37+%, in taxes, so that's the way you have to try to work this is understand the tax brackets, understand your income, and be able to kind of try to keep in what we kind of recommend is this like sweet spot. There's this sweet spot where it's not going to work for everyone, but for some people it's what's called the 12% tax bracket. So, right now, and this is 2023, and this will probably go up a little bit each year, but that 12% tax bracket caps out a little under $90,000. Okay. So if we can shift some money from your IRA into your Roth IRA, but do a smaller amount, because remember, that's income tax, that's considered income tax, do a small enough amount where the total of all your income doesn't exceed that 12% tax bracket of $89,000 and $450, just under $90,000. So if you could do that strategy, you can effectively kind of control the income tax that you paid. You're basically, and I'll talk about this in a second, reducing your potential future tax liability in your IRA, but then increasing this bucket of money that is now tax-free.
Again, the goal here is to minimize the long-term effect of taxes. So we do that incrementally by saying, okay, what do we do this year? What do we do next year? So we have to take into account all the other variables, as you mentioned, and if you have any other taxable income coming in, okay, and what does that add up to be able to calculate that year by year, but ideally showing that in the long term, the effects of the strategy would minimize my overall taxes, ergo maximizing total amount of money in my pocket.
That's right. Let's start off with an example. We have Bill and Karen, both age 60 to keep this simple, and they have a rollover IRA that's worth $1 million, and they have, it's called a taxable investment account or non-qualified, a non-retirement account totaling $1 million. Now remember, the rollover IRA, that's taxed at your ordinary income tax when you pull that money out. And the investment account, while you don't pay any taxes on the actual withdrawal, you do have to be concerned about potentially capital gains, taxes, and dividends and interest. So in order for this strategy to work, and what we're going to consider doing here is this $1 million rollover IRA could lead to a future tax liability and higher income tax rates. But in order to convert this while they're retired, they're going to need something to live off of. Right. So either they have some type of pension or something that they're potentially living off of, or in this example, they're living off of this investment account while they're doing this Roth conversion. So if we look at this $1 million rollover IRA, and we imagine that it grows at 7% over time. Before you do any Roth conversion, just take them, and they just lived off that investment account. And over time, what would happen is that IRA grows and grows and grows as it compounds from age 60 all the way until they start having to do the required minimum distributions. And then at that point, because it's compounded so much, and because of what the IRS deems you have to pull out, that could throw you into a higher tax bracket. So it's kind of a ticking time bomb for potential future higher taxes. So if we look here, again, kind of going back to a prior slide where we talked about the tax bracket, there's this sweet spot of 12%. Well, as of 2023, that the high end of that tax bracket is just under $90,000. Well, there's also, assuming they're not itemizing on their taxes or deductions, they get a standard deduction. And as of 2023, that's around $27,000. So if you add those two together, you have about $117,000 that you can kind of play with in terms of potentially doing a Roth conversion, which again is taxable. Is taxed, right? When the money that you pull out of that you put into the Roth conversion, that's taxed. So that plus any other income, we don't want that to go above around that $117,000.
Right. So you, again, disclaiming, this is assuming you don't itemize and you take the standard deduction, you want to have your income, including the conversion amount, okay, not to exceed that $117,000.
That's right.
Right. So if we do that, what could this look like, Jason?
So here's an example of a potential strategy of doing Roth conversions. Same scenario where this couple, Bill and Karen, have their $1 million IRA. So their $1 million IRA, and let's say they just retired at age 60, they have no other income. So they can technically, again, go up to about that $117,000 figure. Now, just to keep this math simple, I'm going to suggest for this example that we only do $100,000 in a Roth conversion each year. Remember, that's taxable income. And it doesn't exceed that $117,000, assuming they have no other income, taxable income that's coming in. So if we did $100,000 up until the point that they take their Social Security, which is, let's just say they do it at the full retirement age. And then from then on, let's say their Social Security was around $50,000, they have to reduce that Roth conversion down to $50,000 during that time. And again, we're using a very simple example. We're not assuming any inflation. We're not assuming tax brackets change at all, but it's just to get the concept. So if you were to do that over time, and remember that money is going into the money that you're converting is going into a Roth IRA. So that's building another bucket. So even though you're depleting your IRA on this side, you're actually growing your Roth IRA and you're tax-free on the other side. In effect, what we're trying to do is control your tax rate and try to potentially lower taxes over time, and then build this bucket of tax-free money that can be very useful in the future for you.
That's right. And what you'll see is, in the original example, well, the money grows astronomically, which is what we're trying to avoid, because especially when RMDs happen, you're going to pay more in taxes, right? But on this side of the fence, you're saying, okay, well, now I don't just have this one fully taxable bucket. I have two buckets, right? I'm paying taxes I go on one of the buckets. So aggregate is less than in the original bucket. But when you take into account the net effect, okay, and after tax amount, you see that over the lifetime, you're going to have more in your pocket, ideally, given, again, your current tax structure.
That's right. Now, remember, We use very simple examples here just so you can understand the concept. We would never recommend anyone doing this type of strategy without consulting a financial planner.
And even a tax consultant.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely consult a tax consultant as well before doing this. But we hope this helped to understand the concept so that you could think about a way that you could potentially lower your taxes, kind of have a little bit more control over that. So we appreciate you watching. Hope this helps. See you next time.